Welcome back, fellow football fanatics. This is College Football with Sam. And once again, as is becoming kind of a weekly tradition here in college football playoff season, we are bringing on Kris Drew to talk about Ohio State football, react a bit to the Cotton Bowl, and also preview a national championship game that, as I was saying to him pre-show, I think is going to be one of the more exciting ones, whether it's from a brand perspective or how I think the game will play out type of perspective. But before we kick this off, Kris, how are you doing?
Really good, man. It's been really cool to follow this Ohio State team start to finish, and it's cool. One more final test that I'm excited to see how it plays out. It's really cool that this game is between two of kind of the titans of college football history. Obviously, like I'm a big somewhat of a college football historian, and I like the brand matchups, and so I'm really excited that it is a Midwest brand matchup, to say the least.
Do you appreciate not just Ohio State, even though that was how I was originally going to phrase the question, but do you appreciate the downs of these two teams now that you see like their upswing in the postseason, like the NIU loss and all the other
Yeah.
losses?
Oh, absolutely. Well, college football, when it changed to a 14 playoff, it afforded you a chance to like make a slight mistake. The 12-team playoff obviously afforded you a chance to make a big mistake or multiple slight mistakes. And it allows for the bounce back stories to end in championships. And that's not something that we've had before. Usually, if you didn't have your best day, if you had one of your worst days late in the year, sayonara. Like we'll see you in the Sugar Bowl, in the Cotton Bowl, not competing for a chance at a championship. So it is cool to see the swings and have your culture tested, knowing that it still could result in a natty, something that is honestly pretty new.
Yeah, it's very new. I mean, the only time we've seen a two-loss national champion before this, at least in the modern era, was 2007 LSU. I don't know how they finished top two, but that was just a crazy year. We may get to see it now with a team that seeded was seeded eighth in Ohio
Yeah.
State, where
Yes, Sam. How wild is that though? Like we have never seen a two loss team even make a 14 playoff, and yet in 2007 they made the top two and got to win a championship.
that's insane. I think I'm pretty young. I'm still learning a lot, but I think that 2017 Auburn was like the next closest. They were ranked like top two, 10 and
Yeah.
2 entering the SEC title game, and then Georgia just skull dragged them, and then UCF beat them in I think the Peach Bowl.
Yep.
It's absolutely crazy. I also I'll have to do this on my own, or maybe but I think it's crazy that Notre Dame lost to NIU. I don't know of any national champion who lost to like some measly MAC or Group of Five team that went on to even play for a title.
Nothing comes to my mind, at least definitely not in modern college football. I mean, if you look at the last several years, I mean, obviously, like not TCU, not Georgia either year. I mean, the closest might be that Ohio State team that lost to Virginia Tech. I mean that NIU team didn't even finish in the top half of the MAC.
No, they were. It was it. Oh, they were like 7-5. I think they may have even
Hmm.
lost their bowl game. It's just
Yeah, they were disgustingly bad.
yeah. I mean that would be like if Michigan lost to Bowling Green last year and then won it all. And like that's
Big thumbs
just
down. That would be bad.
exactly. It's just gross. So yeah. But before we resume this, guys, just remember to check out Kris Drew on Twitter. It's Kris, and then Drew spelled exactly how it sounds.
Yeah.
Search him up on Twitter, and then of course check out Menace to Sports. I know most of you probably have, but still, just search it up in the YouTube search bar, first thing that pops up, and give them a subscribe. Listen to what they produce on there. They do a really good job. Kris and Zach do, and then you have Juck on Bucks and other shows that feature on there. It's a lot of good stuff. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell so that you can get notified when we go live Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. or whenever else I can when I have the time, and also when I release new content. We'll be going live for the national championship game. Kris is actually going to the championship game, so good luck to you there. Hopefully, the team that you want to win, the Buckeyes, hopefully they can win, because I know that You all know I went to the national title game, Michigan-Washington last year. If Washington would have won, the experience would be
So,
much different from how it ended up being. But yeah, we'll be live doing play-by-play and color commentary, so I'd appreciate it if you were there with me. That'd be a pretty incredible experience. And anything else that will be useful for you all, the description and the pinned comment, the links are all there, including the Discord server, which I highly advise you join. It's just as easy as a click. But first and foremost, I want your reaction to the Cotton Bowl, because the Cotton Bowl was a game that I thought was intriguing for the fact that I felt like for the middle 40 of the game, Texas was either the better team or for whatever reason they were outplaying Ohio State. But then in the moments where it mattered or when Texas nearly took control, Ohio State would just kind of snap and pull away and just remain a step ahead. So how do you describe that game, and any takeaways that you have are welcome?
it's unique. Like Sam, the thing that I told you, I think before the game was my biggest concern was there is talent everywhere. There's a high collection of talent that Texas team had, but it felt like they never snapped everything into place for a full game. And there were moments where I'm watching this Texas Ohio State game, and it looks like Texas is holding the puzzle piece, looking and finding that final spot to complete the puzzle. Because there were moments where they threw some really stiff jabs throughout the game. I'm thinking, oh, this is a real game. This is a Texas team that is definitely ready. And that final drive, I, I felt like we were going to have to see Ryan Day get it together and go down and win the game after a Texas touchdown. Now, the Ohio State defense stood tall and kind of thwarted some drives. And it did feel like at times Texas maybe got too cute. But that ended up being a really great game. I'll that'll be a game where this offseason – I'll watch that game back out of comfort because I know who won the game, but it was a really wildly entertaining game. At least I thought, especially for a
Yes.
game that wasn't a crazy shootout. A lot of times, like in the college football lure, in the college football world, the great games are like the 42-47 games. This game felt like a high skill, the whole game felt like a high leverage situation. It was just a great football game by probably two of the top three teams in the country.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I thought it was a pretty entertaining game. I thought that, you had enough explosiveness, but a lot of it was defense. A lot of it was trench play. I thought both D lines outplayed both offensive lines, like getting pressure, making the QBs uncomfortable. I was really impressed with Will Howard. I know he didn't have a huge game, like in terms of he didn't have like a bunch of deep shots, and his one touchdown was off a screen pass, but correct me if I'm wrong. I thought he made some throws, whether it was off his back foot or just, having to maneuver in the pocket, that I thought were very, very impressive, especially for someone who, came in from the portal. It's not like he was recruited to Ohio State out of high school. He didn't even get an offer from Penn State, his own,
Right.
in his home state. And he was making throws where I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, he's a gamer. And I think that, like what Emmanuel Acho said, for example, is just kind of like, oh, you moron. Like, look right here. Like, the throw to Carnell Tate, I think, on that third down was just beautiful. It was a really good game, and I will watch that too, just because it's entertaining.
I thought Will Howard did a really good job of not panicking when it was clear the game plan was to not let Jeremiah Smith hurt them. It became clear that was the game plan. And, in previous weeks and previous games, I've seen Will Howard kind of panic a little bit when times get like that. Didn't really panic at all. Did try to force the one ball led to the interception, but for the most part, kind of locked in, centered in, and didn't crash the car. That's the big thing. Like, you're here, you don't have to win every game, just don't crash the car. And so I thought he played a pretty good game. I was impressed, and that Texas defense is real deal.
Yes.
And Barron's real deal. Like, they're just a really, really good football team. So for Will Howard to keep Ohio State on schedule, and I felt like almost every drive they got 2 first downs every time. Really, A, kept the defense a little bit fresh, and B, it was really helpful rhythm wise for him. So I played a good game. Continues to impress. I think he's going to sneak his way into the second round of the NFL draft. But yeah, no, I've been really impressed with who he is, the leader, late in the year.
Yeah, I mean that Texas defense is really good. After that game, Still think Ohio State is the better defense, but I think that Texas is the nation's best secondary. Like, even though Notre Dame, some people talk about like their passing defense, they haven't faced the same passing offenses that Texas has. And you look at their, yards allowed per completion. It's like, oh, well, they're a little bit boomer bust. But Texas is, Barron's legit, Makuba's legit. Tafe, who had an emotional post game, is a really good safety too.
Right.
I mean, that's a defense that's close with Ohio State's, and Ohio State's is generationally good, just like their defense was, last year. Totally different style, and this one's more aggressive. But Jim Knowles won the game. I think that ultimately, like you said, Will Howard didn't crash the car, just kept everything moving, and that resulted in a 28-14 Ohio State win. What did you think was going to happen on the 4th and goal, where Sawyer eventually got the TD? Like, what were you anticipating there?
I thought they were going to score. I thought we were going to see someone was going to shake free, but it felt like he got a really good jump. Like the snap, he was basically in the backfield pretty quickly. And, it's funny because, sometimes like the yards moving back can help the offense at times because guys get more room to operate. But really, it just pin the ears back, go get him. I think the call to get a little bit cute on the pitch play was where Sark overthink things.
Yeah, that when I saw that, I thought to myself, what are you doing? Because look, Ohio State's run defense is really good, but it's hard for any defense to defend a run up the middle, especially when Texas had been getting like a yard or two on most of those plays anyway throughout the game. It's
just,
like
there's just so much of a higher probability of a negative play on a pitch play in particular.
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah, like if you don't block well, especially Here's the thing too. Ohio State safeties are unique. Like they're high football IQ, they're all NFL guys. Like, do you really think you're going to outsmart them on a pitch play, or that you're going to out accelerate them to the the opposite
to the short
boundary?
side? To the short side, it felt like.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. But yeah, that's bad. But that's another thing too. I thought that Ohio State, even though they lost certain parts of the game, ultimately outcoached Texas, and that was a huge part of the reason why they won.
Ohio State this year too, their goal line defense has had some huge moments. Obviously, I know they lost the Michigan game, but the Jack Sawyer huge moment in that game. The Penn State game. I mean, Penn State had 4 plays from the 2-yard line. They couldn't get it done. I mean, that secondary and their willingness to come up and tackle down there. I think it's really important. I mean, basically, Lathan Ransom is essentially in the run game like a linebacker. That's how good he is and how much of a thumper he is. And they're just really good up front, and they're deep. They had the goal line stops against Nebraska as well. Penn State, like I referenced. I mean, they have done really, really good around the goal line. And again, with how good they've been, I'm surprised that Sark kind of quote unquote let them off the hook with that pitch play, allowing them to get a negative play.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon, 4th and goal stop. They had 2 against Michigan. One earlier in the game where Michigan tried to run it up the middle and it didn't work.
They're really stout, Sam. They're really stout down there.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, and the only weakness on the defense is like corner, but corner isn't going to tackle like typically, right? Safety, linebacker, DT, D end.
I mean, it's just the big guys in the middle, and additionally, like our one corner, Igmanosin, that gets called for all the holdings, is really good in the run game. Denzel Burke has been up and down in the run game, but Denzel Burke at that point wasn't playing. It was Jermaine Matthews. Denzel Burke tweaked something on the Isaiah Bond play. So, I mean, it just I think Sark just got a little bit too cute. Just got a little bit too cute right there, especially like given the weight of the moment, and snap it to a tight end or run behind somebody. Like, just give your offense the best shot, and he didn't do it. And because of that, Jim Knowles might have just given himself a blank check.
Yeah, I think Jim Knowles has done the best job of any defensive coordinator this year with how, I mean, they're only allowing 12.2 points per game. They don't allow many yards. They don't. They do so well, and I am just really impressed with their effort in different things, especially I would say the fundamental soundness. They don't get a lot of turnovers, but they do a very good job of tackling. What did you say?
Yeah, I was gonna say they don't miss tackles. We were just on the same point.
They never ever miss tackles. That's like that doesn't happen. And if it somehow does, I think it's because they're playing an alien. Like, it's not really on them, it's on like the other guy. And speaking of that, I want to get to Notre Dame and Ohio State, and I think Notre Dame has a pair of aliens, at least when healthy, and like Jeremiah Love, and also I think Xavier Watts. I haven't seen Xavier Watts listed as like a first round safety, but he gets a lot of turnovers. He kind of is all over the field too, I've noticed, especially in the playoffs. What do you think a win here means for each coach? Because I think there's like in other matchups, there isn't the same type of, maybe it's superstitious, but it doesn't feel like there'd be the same type of intensity that there is like here.
I think a win for Ryan Day sets him on the right path to try to build the next power of college football with Nick Saban being gone. I think for Ohio State, they're one of the 5 or 6 schools that I think can match Alabama's recruiting prowess during the prime of the Nick Saban years. And at Ohio State, with that much talent, it's almost like about time that you win a natty. And, there's been a lot of stigma around Ryan Day. Like, can he win the big one? Like, obviously we know he's got to beat Michigan at least at some point. But for Marcus Freeman, I think it's about shattering the ceiling, because Brian Kelly left Notre Dame under the excuse, we can call it at this point, is their ceiling's not high enough. I can't get the kids I want. I don't have the money I need. Like every excuse in the book, I need to be somewhere else where I can win something, because I'm tired of being called a bad coach that can't win the big game when it's not my fault. It's Notre Dame's fault. Marcus Freeman comes in, has some blunders. This season, though, has represented a lot of growth for him as a coach. I always talk about coaches need to make sure they are get it right guys rather than be right guys. And Marcus Freeman has kind of been that. And I also think that Marcus Freeman's a year ahead of schedule. This defense in particular, very, very young everywhere. I obviously, that Watts is older and Howard Cross is, but they're young just about everywhere else. Their quarterback room is going to be really good next year as well. I mean, their left tackle who's missing this game, who played all year, was a true freshman, and that's super rare, especially given kind of the body development that the guys had to go through. So for Marcus Freeman, he's already ahead of schedule, and a win here would signal to everybody that there is no ceiling at Notre Dame, because I won a year early. It was signaled to boosters and donors. I have a chance to build something really special here. I mean, this is a rat race, I guess, to be the premier replacement program for the Nick Saban Alabama teams. And these are 2 first-time head coaches at big places with lots of money and lots of pressure and expectations that can both extend their careers by 5 years minimally with the win in this game.
I love that. A few questions for you. I would say, number one, who are the other programs who can match the, prime Nick Saban recruiting prowess, like besides Ohio State and obviously like Alabama?
I'm a firm believer that Texas can. I mean, in today's NIL era, they've got the recruiting base, obviously, in a state like Texas. Right now, while Texas A&M is okay, they're still trying to get the stench of Jimbo Fisher off them. And I do think, the state of Texas, it'll be Texas and Georgia battling for a lot of those kids. And obviously their NIL money is there. Georgia, of course, the couple bubbling teams, I think LSU was on track to maybe start to take a piece out of that pie. But honestly, I think Michigan kind of thwarted that. Michigan and stealing Bryce Underwood really effectively halted their momentum. It was the big emergency brake on the side. Do not push this button. And so Bryce Underwood kind of halted there. But they've shown that when they do get going, but they need winning seasons, they can get going. Florida is a dark horse team for me, because I do know they have NIL money, and the base of Florida, if they're able to be good and get kids there with their home environment, they'll always have an advantage over a school like Miami in terms of recruiting and long-lasting recruiting. And then the last one actually, USC, if they do get right. Now, they won't recruit the same kind of kids, but I honestly think, Sam, that a big part of Oregon's success is the fact that USC is so down, because all those West Coast kids, if they want to stay out West and they want to be competitive, it's not USC's the answer. Oregon is. But if USC does figure it out, they can be a school that we've seen in the past. I mean, historically, those Reggie Bush teams, if they can cut off California, they effectively will be top 5 in blue chip ratio every year. So that's kind of the grouping that I have. But Texas is the number 1, and then Ohio State is the number 2.
Yeah, Texas. I mean, the fact that they brought in the number 1 recruiting class for this cycle, I thought was pretty like good for their future. The other question that I had would be, if Freeman wins this game, is the only coach that's ahead of him Kirby Smart? Or is he still too early on in his career to rank him as like the number 2 guy?
I'd rank him at 2 with debate. It wouldn't be unequivocally number 2, but I would probably place him at number 2 with debate. I think for number 2 without debate, he needs to get rid of the ketchup stains on the shirt that he's had every year. He's had those bad, like look, Ryan Day has a Michigan problem. I can acknowledge that. Ryan Day's never lost to NIU. Ryan Day with the game on the line. Like, imagine this, Sam. Imagine that in that Texas-Ohio State game, imagine if Ohio State only had 10 men on the field for the final couple plays.
I would have laughed my butt off.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Marcus Freeman lost to Michigan. He lost to Ohio State, excuse me. Had 10 guys on the field on a 4th and 1.
Yeah, it's mismanagement after mismanagement, and then last year, like losing to like the worst Dabo Swinney team in a decade.
Yeah,
this year NIU. Last year, no, not last year. The year before that, I mean, lost to Stanford before David Shaw sent himself into retirement. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Is if Marcus Freeman wins the game, he's number 2 with debate. If Ryan Day wins it all. Oh, this is another interesting point. If he wins it all, is there an argument for him to be number 1? I mean, I'm not saying that's like it'd be unanimous because Kirby's won too, but with the current trajectory and him finally reaching there while Georgia had a down year, would there be an argument for that? Or am I insane?
I don't think so. I think projecting wise there'd be an argument, but I don't think current day there'd be an argument. Because I think I've seen Kirby's very best beat basically Ryan Day's very best. So until I would have a tough time judging Kirby Smart in what again was a down year, but you made it to the Final Four or the Elite 8. It's crazy. So I don't think maybe projection wise you could have the conversation, but I think until you win me either another national championship or you can start beating your rivals consistently, I think I'll have Kirby number 1 there.
Yeah, that's very understandable and I think very fair. Kirby's faced like 2 Georgia Tech teams recently that were at least competent. Yeah. Georgia Tech's typically been like a doormat to Georgia for a while. And then you look at the fact that their roster got destroyed by what was by far the nation's toughest schedule, and they still went 11-3. And maybe if one fewer injury happens, maybe they play Penn State instead of Notre Dame, or maybe they beat Alabama because they only lost by 7, or I don't know. But college football.
I also think that if Georgia was on the other side of the bracket and Ohio State wasn't, that they would also be the Natty currently as well.
Oh, if they played Tennessee at home, then played Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and then faced Texas. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see that. I do think that for as much hate as that bottom half of the bracket got, that like Notre Dame is extremely well coached, fundamentally sound, and if you're not perfect at stopping their strengths, they'll just bully you. And for all the jokes about Penn State and James Franklin, if you're not more talented than they are, that team will eat you alive because their roster is just that good, especially Abdul Carter. But then looking at this game, what do you think the most important thing is for Ohio State to win? Like, what do they have to do to win, and what does Notre Dame have to do to win as well?
For Ohio State, the key is going to be, testing the man coverage of Notre Dame early and often. I mean, obviously, like Notre Dame, their DNA on defense is the man coverage, and I think Ohio State needs to not fall for the trap. Now, here we go. This is a quick little sidebar, Sam. Penn State ran a ton of stretch against Notre Dame, and they were very effective. Over 200 rushing yards. I believe they averaged over 5 yards a carry on stretch alone, maybe over 6 yards a carry on stretch alone. I think Ohio State could see that and maybe give that a whirl, but Penn State is better than Ohio State at running stretch.
Yes.
So I think if stretch becomes a part of the game plan for Ohio State, it honestly plays into Notre Dame's hands, and it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. I think the number one thing for Ohio State is you have to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith early and often and force Marcus Freeman and Al Golden to think twice every time they call a play that requires man coverage. and you need that doubt to creep in early. So I think that's the big key for Ohio State. I don't think Notre Dame has anything offensively that frightens Jim Knowles at all. And I think the way that you stop this game from being a tight, awkward game is by scoring early and forcing Notre Dame to make a decision on how they want this game to go.
I think that's, oh wow, did not expect that. But I think that's very well put. Do you think there's any universe in which the man coverage actually benefits Notre Dame, or do you think that just against these caliber of athletes, that's typically going to go like Ohio State's way?
I think it could be an advantage if you are able to get hands on receivers and knock off the rhythm, paired up with a lot of blitzing up front. Because like, what's the number one thing when you're in man? Well, you don't want guys to have to cover for too long. So I think for Notre Dame, they're going to have to generate a lot of pressure, and be physical with the Ohio State receivers. Now, you always run a risk of getting physical with a guy like Jeremiah Smith, because if you're up in the line of scrimmage and you jam and he beats you, you're beat right away. No pass rush can save that. So.
No.
I mean, we've seen Notre Dame in the past get really physical with Marvin Harrison Jr. and kind of hold him in check. Now, I will say this offense dynamic is different with Will Howard back there, not Kyle McCord. But Al Golden has done enough, a lot of cover two shell stuff, man underneath, to try to kind of limit the explosive plays. And that's, I think that if you get in the habit of seeing man and determining where you're going to go with the ball before the play, I think that could end up hurting you. And that's where man coverage provides an advantage.
Yeah, because that's something that I've heard all week is like the different sides of the man coverage argument. Like Will Howard's on one hand, very effective against man coverage, but on the other hand, he hasn't seen a whole lot of it because
right.
Who's going to run man coverage against these receivers? I mean, this is part of like my whole debate with some people about like Ohio State and like who they are up front. Like they don't face, you can't blitz them and you can't run a bunch of man coverage against them. At least most teams can't, because they have Jeremiah Smith and two other NFL receivers and a QB who's very underrated for whatever reason, even though he's second in QBR. Like that's hard to defend and be aggressive against and line up man on man. It just is. I do agree that I think it can be an advantage if they can be physical, if they can get pressure, and also if that's combined with them being able to hold on in like the ground game too. If they can stop, whether it's the outside zone or
right.
the inside zone.
Stretch. It just takes away when you have more guys in the line of scrimmage. It kind of makes running the ball a little muddier. And if you're not Penn State, if you are Notre Dame, what's the number one thing you want to do? Muddy everything.
Yeah, you want to make it messy.
Yeah,
because your offense probably isn't scoring 20 points. Or if it does, it's probably a special teams play or a pick six. Like there's a lot of things, more things that have to go Notre Dame's way than Ohio State's. Not even because Ohio State's like 14 points better on power ratings scale, but because how they match up, I think. And I mean, yeah, it's like what Penn State did against Notre Dame was impressive running the ball, but that's also like Penn State's rushing offense has been really, really good for the past month and a half. I'd actually argue it's better, depending on the situation, than Notre Dame's is. I just think they've played better defenses.
I probably agree.
Notre Dame hasn't played Ohio State's defense like Penn State did, and then they've played other good defensive fronts too. Also, Singleton was banged up for like half the year or a third of the year, so that hurts. What's your prediction? Do you think it's going to be a game that's like a total of in the 20s or 30s, or do you think there's a chance it can be a higher scoring game? Like, what's your overall expectation here?
I could see Notre Dame getting into the teens, Sam, but I think Ohio State's going to score 20 to 30. So I think that this game has a chance to. Here we go. This is fascinating. Do you remember the 2014 Ohio State Oregon game, the Natty?
I don't remember it, but I watched highlights of it, and Ohio State, of course, won and won dominantly.
Well, so here we go. So it's remembered as a game where they won dominantly, but did you know that game was 21-21 in the third quarter? People forget how close that game was in the third.
I did forget that. I remember Oregon hanging on for about a half, but then eventually OSU pulled away.
It was a 1-point game in the third quarter, about halfway through the third quarter, and then Ohio State ripped off 3 straight touchdowns to put it away.
Wow.
So I could see this game going like that. I think that there is a chance Notre Dame could hang close because their defense is really well coached. They are disciplined. I mean, they're gonna get some sacks. They're gonna they're gonna put Ohio State a little bit behind schedule because I think their run defense could hit some negative plays early because Howard Cross matched up against Carson Hinsman, who's been kind of up and down this year. That could cause some problems early for Ohio State. But I do think Ohio State has too much firepower down the stretch. If someone like held a death beam pointed at me and said, get the right score, I'd probably say like 31-17. But part of me thinks that this is going to be a full-on coordination and that Ohio State, I'll know after the first drive if this is going to be a bloodbath or not.
Yeah, my score prediction is 28-17. I think Ohio State wins and covers, but I think Notre Dame finds a way to limit them to under 30, just like Texas did. But at the end of the day, I don't see Notre Dame scoring too many offensive points without a meltdown on Ohio State's side, which won't happen, or a pick six or, several turnovers or something. Do you think that's Notre Dame's ultimate path to winning, is just frustrating Ohio State's offense into kind of shooting itself in the foot, keeping the defense on the field, and then in the fourth quarter they just kind of have that drive?
And here we go, Sam. Notre Dame's special teams unit is offense. Like, they block punts. Like, they make things happen, and I know that they're going to do everything they can to block a punt or a kick because, the Ohio State special teams, for as dominant they've been everywhere else, has not been very good. So I think it will take kind of frustrating the offense and then a big plan of special teams and win the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And that's where Notre Dame wants to win those games. I mean, we saw what they did against Georgia in that last minute of the first half, scored a touchdown, special teams, big special teams play, backing them up, forcing the fumble, and then scoring immediately. And then special teams play to start the next half with the kick return for a touchdown. I think Notre Dame's gonna win it like that if there is a path for them to win.
Georgia won almost the remainder of the game, and then the middle 2 touchdowns just put them permanently behind, and they had to change everything.
So middle 8 for Notre Dame is how they're gonna win it.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame has a chance. I mean, I made content that I'll release shortly about I think there's multiple reasons why Notre Dame can win, but I think at the end of the day, Ohio State's a big favorite for a reason. They're the better team. They're the more well-rounded team, and matchups at the end of the day, they kind of matter. And I just wonder how that man coverage and the blitzing, that could do very well. It could, but it could also totally backfire.
It could backfire.
And it turns into a blowout immediately with big play after big play. Because they haven't played an offense like this. Who do you think the closest offense that Notre Dame has faced is to Ohio State? Would you say Penn State?
Penn State. I guess USC does a lot schematically, but if you look at some of their opponents, it's really not been anybody good.
Wow,
it's not been any offense that's dynamic. And I was trying to go through and see how many NFL receivers has this team seen this year. A&M, Louisville, USC are the 3 regular season games. I think the best receiving unit they've faced all year has been Indiana's.
Yeah, and to be fair to Notre Dame, they destroyed Indiana's offense. They put that offense on skates, but they still don't have the talent that Ohio State does. All Notre Dame's really faced that's comparable to or better than Ohio State is some better O-lines and better rushing offenses. They haven't faced the same wide receivers. I don't even think they've played a similar caliber QB, just from what Will Howard can do with his legs. And
I like Curtis Rourke. I think Curtis Rourke is really talented, but he's definitely a different athletic profile than Will Howard.
Yeah, not to go too off topic. I know that you saw he played with a torn ACL, partially for the whole year. That's admirable.
That's a tough kid, man. That's a tough kid. And I was wondering because he sat some games out. He sat 2 games out. I don't even remember, but they said it was because of a finger injury.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were trying to rest that knee or clean it up a little bit because playing with that ACL in this kind of sport is rough. And for him, and it happened before the year.
Ouch. That helped connect the puzzle pieces for me as to why he wasn't running as much as he did at Ohio. Because against Ohio State, they never ran him. And I thought to myself, why wouldn't you run him in a big game? Same thing with Notre Dame, but he probably literally couldn't without risking a full-on tear.
I mean, if you look at his previous years, 300 yards rushing, 200 yards rushing, 200 yards rushing again, and then negative 35 for Indiana.
Wow.
Warrior, kid's a warrior, Sam. I love the kid. He's a warrior. I think NFL scouts are going to love that about him. Never complained, was never an excuse. I mean, shoot, Sam, if I tore my ACL and I played bad against Notre Dame, the first thing I'm saying at the podium is I've been playing with a torn ACL. Never brought it up. In fact, I think it got leaked out.
Yeah,
And
it did.
I know that some people were pretty frustrated that it got leaked out because he didn't want it out, because he didn't want the excuse. So
It's understandable. Yeah, I love him. Thought he was a great quarterback this year, and not to stay off topic for too long, but I do think Indiana. I do think that Cignetti is the real deal. Someone in my comment section like made a comparison with him to Mel Tucker. I'm like, they don't have a Kenneth Walker. Like they never had anything close to that on the team. That was a whole team effort right there.
Yeah.
That season was.
no, I'm excited about Cincinnati moving forward. I think Cincinnati's really good.
Yeah, he'll be incredible. I think at Indiana. Now
I agree.
we'll have to see, of course, where that goes because it's hard to project in the future.
I think he can recruit. You know, he's the coach that landed Julio Jones. Fun fact for you.
And Mark Ingram too, right?
Yep, Julio Jones, Mark Ingram. That was Kurt Cignetti getting it done.
That's crazy. I was ashamed of myself when I learned that he was the wide receivers coach at Alabama, like mid-season. Like, why didn't I pick up on that earlier? Like, if I saw that earlier, maybe I could have predicted him to go like 8-4 or 9-3 instead of 6-6.
It's just because he was out of sight, out of mind for so long. But and people always were telling me. I don't think a lot of people knew Sam, because other analysts would be like, "Hey, like, are we sure Cincinnati can recruit long term?" Like, absolutely, I am. Like he was recruiting the SEC when it was pay for play going on everywhere, and he was landing kids. So I got faith in him building Indiana the right way.
Yeah, and he left Alabama on his own terms. It wasn't
Correct.
like he got fired.
Oh, left on his own terms.
So this is interesting. If Ryan Day left like not tomorrow, but like after the Natty, like wins it all, goes to the NFL, who would you want to replace him? Would Cignetti be on the list?
Yeah, I'm interviewing Sig. I'm interviewing Dan Lanning, and I'm seeing if Mike Vrabel already signed that Patriots contract. Those are my three. Internally, if I was gonna, interview someone from on the inside, I would only interview Tim Walton. That'd be the only guy I'd interview from the current Ohio State staff. And then I'd play ball with those candidates and see what we got.
Kenny Dillingham, or you think he's long term at AZ State?
I would interview Dilly. I don't think Dilly's ready. I think he needs a little bit more time in the fire, but I do like Dillingham a lot.
Yeah, those are great names. Those are, yeah. I mean, and I don't think Day's leaving, but there's always that chance, especially with him being the offensive mind and the schematic guy.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the matchup, on players for Notre Dame, Ohio State?
No, not really. I mean, I'm curious to see Bo Collins versus Igbenogson. Obviously, Bo Collins a bigger physical receiver, and Igbenogson a bigger physical corner. I'm curious to see how that whistle's going to play out. Obviously, Greathouse. We'll see how he does against Denzel Burke, and if Denzel Burke's healthy. But really, just kind of, I'm interested to see the battle of the coaches, the chess match of Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman. And hopefully, we get a really good natty that ends happy for me, because if I'm going to be there, I would like the red confetti to fall.
Of course. Absolutely. To go to such a huge event like that and then to suffer a loss it'd be something you'd remember, and well, hopefully in part a good way, because you went to the game, but you also got that that sting. But
right.
The good news is with Ohio State is, I mean, they're recruiting at a high level, they develop at a high level. I think they've shown in this playoff run so far that I think they're going to get there. Whether it's hopefully Monday, or whether it's at another point in the future. I really like what I see, if I'm being honest. And the only other really coaching staff that I can compare to the job this one's done in the playoff is frankly Notre Dame. Yeah. So I think it's very fitting that it's these two teams playing for it all in Atlanta.
I'm excited, man.
Oh, I'm pumped too, and I'm happy that you're going.
I
also think that it's interesting, thinking about Mitchell Evans and if how he'll get involved, if he can get involved, because he's not Tyler Warren, but I'm wondering like how they can get the passing offense going, because if they can't, I think that's how the game gets out of hand, because I think Ohio State's rushing defense is way too good for Notre Dame to just do what they want to do on offense and find points.
Here's a little Mitchell Evans note. He wanted Ohio State coming out of high school. He is from Akron. That's where I'm from. Played quarterback for his school because they didn't really have a quarterback, but was down to play tackle or tight end for Ohio State. And Ohio State didn't get involved, and the kid ended up going to Notre Dame, made some big plays against them the last time they played. So this would be cool for him. And a quarterback coach I know thinks that he would have been a really good quarterback if he just stuck with it, because the kid has unbelievable arm strength.
Wow. I never knew that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for teaching me about that.
Well, look, Sam, if you see a not Tyler Warren, if you see a Mitchell Evans trick play where he throws the ball, high school quarterback, oh, well, I got you.
I'll shout you out for sure. Like if we're live and we see like 75-yard bomb trick play, it's like, oh, well, thank you, Kris, for letting me know, because I had no clue this guy had like a cannon of an arm.
Cannon.
It'd be insane.
Yeah.
It's like I'll never forget when Donovan Edwards threw like his touchdown pass. I'm like, that's something I never expected. I don't think he played quarterback in high school, but still, like those plays always are, you never expect them unless you've watched enough of them, or the pitch back is just so far behind the QB that's like, oh, they pitched it back that far to make sure he can throw it if he has the option to.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Cam Scadaboo before we finish off? What do you think of the Cam Scadaboo throw? Like that was awful.
Dude, that was a Heisman level game for Cam Scadaboo. He had the receiving yards, the throwing yards, and the rushing yards. He was there. He was like 60% of their entire offense was Cam Scadaboo. I didn't know he could throw it.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like I knew he could catch. I knew he, obviously running back, but he put some mustard on that ball.
Yeah, I mean, it was he obviously has enough muscle to throw 40, 30 yards, but it was just it was like hanging in the air. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to end well, and then it's a touchdown anyway.
Like chucked it straight up, but it looked like he emptied the tank to throw that football, Sam.
Yeah, it looked like it looked like a punt. Like, those throws where the quarterback throws it really horribly and then it comes down as if it's a punt, and the interception looks like a fair catch. That's
John
what it looked
O'Corn,
like.
Trace McSorley, I know.
Oh, wow. I wish I was watching football in the 2010s. I know that my Wolverines wouldn't have had a lot of fun, but still, college football is like bigger than it's bigger than my team.
Right.
It's
when you say arm punt, I think of the clip, and I'm sure you've seen it or have seen it. It was the no, John, no, from the booth of the Michigan game when John O'Corn, the Michigan yeah. That was an arm punt.
He overthrew his guy for like 20 yards.
Yeah.
Oh, that game was horrible. I sent out a tweet like the other day talking about like someone was mentioning how like it was Ed Warner, and although they were gone after 16, but still it was someone talking about like the OCs that Ohio State had in 15 and 16, and then I kind of lumped in the 17 team because they were clunky at times.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, like, man, how did Michigan, like, they never beat any of those teams? And that's just that to me is almost insane. It's insane. It's like, wow, you had your opportunities, but that's ultimately the story of the sport. I mean, you have your opportunities, and if you don't take them, it's not like the NBA where you have a 7-game series and you can claim like, well, we beat them twice. That's not how this works. With the 12-team playoff, it's closer because you can play a team 3 times, but it's regular season versus postseason. Well, it's been fantastic having you on, Kris. I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you have a great trip to the national championship and get the result that you want. We'll probably have Kris later on, guys, in like a week or few days, whenever he's available, to recap the national championship game, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss, and maybe to talk a little bit about the 2025 season, because I know I'm ready to talk about preseason content, and I want to get my, depth charts correct and see what other teams are looking like, because it's going to be the second year of the 12-team playoff, and a lot of these teams at the top are losing. It's not just Ohio State, but like Texas is losing a lot. Georgia is losing some guys. Oregon's losing a boatload.
A bunch of guys. They're losing a ton of production.
Yeah. And then like it's going to be even more different as the transfer portal, NIL, Saban retiring, all that stuff and its ramifications continues to compound upon each other, and you begin to stack years of that. I'm very excited.
I am as well.
So make sure again to subscribe to our channel or to my channel, and then also to check out Kris Drew on Menace to Sports and subscribe to their channel over there. And check out Kris on Twitter as well. It's just type in his name. You'll find his Twitter account. Talks a lot about a lot of different things, and he knows his stuff, and it's the same thing with Menace to Sports. So thank you guys so much for coming on, and I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who you know enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brascal Rascal, and Carlo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.